So I'm doing a review today on Nikos Parfums Sculpture Parfum, this one right here. I'm also going to compare it to the original Eau de Toilette from 1995. So are you familiar with Nikos Parfum Sculpture, and have you heard about the Parfum version? Have you gotten your nose on it yet? Well, today in this video you're going to find out all about this fragrance, where I bought it from, all that good stuff coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, today I'm talking about Nikos Parfums Sculpture Parfum. It comes almost 30 years after the original launched in 1995. I was a fan of it, and it was actually kind of in that line of fragrances that is similar to Minotaure by Paloma Picasso and also Laura Biagiotti Roma Uomo. So Nikos Sculpture in Eau de Toilette was created by Michel Almairac in 1995. So that fragrance reminds me of Minotaure, which was launched in 1992, also created by Michel Almairac. So in that same year in 1992, Annick Monardo created a fragrance called Laura Biagiotti Roma Uomo. So these fragrances kind of had that similarity, and I really enjoyed these fragrances. I liked their whole fresh amber take on men's designer fragrances. So going past that, the Sculpture Parfum came out last year in 2022. After almost 30 years, as I said, it's created now by Alienor Massenet. And if you don't know this perfumer, she's done a lot of fragrances for Memo Paris. This I consider an amber citrus fragrance, just like the last one. And this version, it's a lot more substantial in comparison to the Eau de Toilette. Where did I buy my bottle of Sculpture Parfum? So I was perusing the internet, and I was doing some searching for fragrances, and I discovered it at Joma Shop. And over there, it was 100 ml for 28 bucks. I gave it a chance because I was looking forward to it, and I actually featured it in a video of upcoming fragrances last year because I had heard it was coming, and I never saw it anywhere. But it was at Joma Shop, 28 bucks. I took a chance, bought it with a few other things. I racked up enough dollars for the order to get free shipping. And I got it, and I was like, this is actually really, really great. Takes me back to the early to mid 90s. I like that about this. I'm going to go buy another bottle just to have as a backup. 28 bucks is really cheap for this. Guess what? It was sold out. Completely gone. So I don't know where you can currently buy a bottle of Sculpture Parfum, but if Joma Shop brings it back, make sure to take advantage of it, because I think it's quite good, especially for the $28 price point, right? Who actually wore Sculpture or Minotaure or Laura Biagiotti Uomo in the early 90s or mid 90s? There are other fragrances that came later that kind of had that similar DNA as well that I kind of dismissed and ignored at the time, but really big fans of these three fragrances from the early to mid 90s. But the Sculpture Parfum features notes of tonka beans, precious amber, bergamot, bourbon vanilla, orange flowers, lily of the valley, lavender, coriander, and geranium. So when I was wearing this Sculpture Parfum, I actually enjoyed it so much that I did that short on YouTube, and then that's how I was receiving messages asking me where I got the bottle from and all that good stuff. So I thought I'd do a video review of this thing so that you guys can find out, and you can be on the lookout if you were to get your hands on a bottle. Because as I said, 100 ml, 28 bucks, so good for this, because this version I had to go and order recently as well is around the same. Like I think it's like 20 bucks though, so it's a little less. And even though the two fragrances, smell so similar when you first spray them, they're almost identical. There's not much different. The only difference you'll notice when you first spray both of them is that the Eau de Toilette is much fresher and the Parfum is much more dense. To me also, the Parfum doesn't act like a real concentrated Parfum, but you can notice the thickness. There's definitely a thickness there. And I think because of that, I'm going to go ahead and say this is actually a true Parfum, because there's definitely a density here when you're putting it on. And with the original in Eau de Toilette, you can also experience the freshness. It's breezier and airier in comparison to the Parfum. So when you first spray it, as I said, they do remind me of one another. I think it's the development stage when they're kind of being different. For me, I felt like the Parfum was also a bit closer to the skin, but much longer lasting than the original, whereas the original was much more far reaching. It had much more projection. I mean, I shouldn't say this doesn't project at all, they do, but I felt like the original projected more because it's just a much fresher fragrance, and since there's not a lot of density there with the original, it did have a lot more projection. But for me, what's running the show here is the amber, for sure, with the kind of nutty tobacco-ish touches of the tonka beans. It is fresh. I would call this an amber citrus or citrus amber fragrance. You'll definitely notice it, but you'll definitely notice a lot more amber here in comparison to the original. There's vanillic touches for sure, and I believe the original had that as well. I didn't write down the notes for the original, but this is a lot more denser and a lot more ambery, syrupy, and a bit powdery as well. You do definitely experience it. And then you've got flowers here. You've got the orange flower and the lily of the valley. What a great combination. I like this. And here with the orange flower, I can see it's like the beginnings of combining orange flower with, vanillic notes and things like that to give you that kind of, Love Don't Be Shy thing. I'm not saying this smells like Love Don't Be Shy, but when you really put your nose on it and focus on it, it's kind of like the beginnings of combining these two notes and to come up with this kind of airy, vanillic, sweet, marshmallowy kind of a combo. Again, they're not identical. I'm just saying it kind of reminds me of the idea of Love Don't Be Shy. But there's also spices here and aromatics, the lavender for sure. It gives you a very aromatic herbal touch here. But definitely a much better take on the original if you want something a lot more longer lasting. I feel like it lingers on a lot longer, whereas the original kind of disappears quite fast. But then you've got this longer lasting concentrated version of the original. The only other thing I noticed that was different between the Eau de Toilette version here and the Parfum version is that the Eau de Toilette version had a bit of a laundry, clean, fresh smelling quality or touch about it, whereas the Parfum version did not. That was pretty much the only kind of the smell difference, but the majority of the fragrances, both of them smell one another. And then, of course, when the original is drying down, it's drying down fresher. So a lot of the notes that I mentioned for the Parfum version are kind of reversed. There's less amber there, and there's more amber here. There's more woods here, and there's less woods there, kind of a thing. And even though you do dry down to an amber and woods, you still have a lot more freshness with the flowers and the citruses and things like that with the original in comparison to the Parfum. So do you need this one? I would say you don't really need it if you have the original, but I say get it if you can find it for $28. I think the longevity is a great factor to end up having a bottle of the Parfum version. And I think what I'm going to do here going forward, since I have both of these now, as you can see, I've worn a lot more of this because I really, really loved it. And it took me back. I was in my early years of really, really embracing perfumery and fragrances and enjoying great designer fragrances like the Laura Biagiotti Uomo and the Minotaure, and then of course Sculpture in 95, because that whole DNA was really, really great. But I'm trying to think, the Michel Almairac created Minotaure in 92. Annick Menardo created Laura Biagiotti Uomo in 92. Why are those fragrances so similar? Did these two perfumers work together at one time? I don't know the history of these two perfumers. Did one copy the other? Why were they so similar in smells? I'm not saying they're identical, but they are. And then of course Michel Almairac copied himself from Minotaure and created Sculpture. He switched some things around, and so now we have the Parfum version of Sculpture. It took them a long time to bring this back. I'm happy they did, and I'm always curious to try Parfum concentration versions of fragrances, and especially ones that I'm familiar with, like the Sculpture. And I'm happy that they kept the smell here similar to the original and not changed it completely, and they call it a Parfum. Where we were talking about Annick Menardo's fragrances, Boss Bottled Number 6 and things like that. The Parfum version of that fragrance that came out last year didn't smell like the original Boss Bottled. It didn't. And so I'm glad they kept it similar here, because I'm familiar with the original, and I kind of want what they do with the new version of it because I'm so familiar with it. If I grab a fragrance that's a flanker of another and it's completely different, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't really make sense. So I'm glad they kept the smell here similar to the original, but just gave us a lot more dense and a lot more intense version of the original. Really a great fan and happy of this one. I hope you guys get to try this and you can find yourself a bottle. 28 bucks is really, really cheap. It's so much less expensive than designer fragrances these days. And I'm happy that they did a Parfum version of this one. Really am, and really enjoying this one. So Nikos Parfums, I had to look up, is under Coty. And it seems like they have a whole website still present. And they've got not only the Eau de Toilette version there, they have the Parfum version there. And they have also another flanker that's in the clear bottle. So I'm curious to see if I can find that bottle, that fragrance anywhere. Because I've never smelled the other flanker. And I'm forgetting the name of the... It's basically Sculpture and something else. And I can't remember what it is. So hopefully I can get my hands on a bottle. But I'm happy this is out. I'm happy that I've got it. And I'm happy that I can report back to you guys about it. And again, as I said, I hope you guys get yourself... you have the chance to go ahead and end up getting a bottle of it. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Nikos Parfums Sculpture Parfum and how it compares to Sculpture in the Eau de Toilette version. Let me know if you guys have tested the Sculpture Parfum. Let me know if you're a fan of Sculpture in the Eau de Toilette version. And have you been wanting to get your nose on the Sculpture Parfum? As I said, their smells are very, very close. Just you can experience more ambery density and woodiness and the Tonka intensity here in the Parfum version in comparison to the Eau de Toilette version. But either way, guys, one more thing I should show you, the box. It's interesting that the Parfum comes in this white box here. That fits in there. But the Eau de Toilette comes in a blue box, so they kind of reversed it, but not the same blue, obviously. It's a bit more like a baby blue color. Anyway, that's the Eau de Toilette's box. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Please like this video, please share it, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.